Chapter 10, Graphical User Interfaces Part 1. Our goals for this chapter are to be able to implement a simple graphical user interface, to add buttons, text fields, and other components to a frame window, to handle events that are generated by buttons, and to write programs that display simple drawings. A frame window is where all of your graphical user interface components will go. So your text boxes and your text areas and your buttons, they'll all go on a frame. It's a container, if you will, for all of your GUI components. Java's JFrame class allows you to display a frame, and it's part of the javax.swing package. We've used the javax.swing package already for JOption pane. Notice that the frame window contains a familiar title bar and the familiar close button and maximize button and minimize buttons that you have with your operating system. So if you're using Windows, it'll look like Windows. If you're using Mac, it'll look like Mac. The JFrame, to construct a JFrame, there are 5 steps. The first one is to call the constructor of the JFrame class. So JFrame frame equals new JFrame. We call it frame. It's just kind of traditional, but you can call it whatever you want. You can call it window or well, anyway, you can call it whatever you want. Frame is convenient. Then you set the size of the frame. Frame.setSize 300, 400. That's in pixels, and it is screen dependent. So on different screens, it will automatically adjust. Then you set the title of the frame. Frame.setTitle, and then add whatever title you wish. Then we set the default close operation. Frame.setDefaultClose operation. JFrame.exit on close. So when you close the window, what happens? You exit the program. That's exactly what this is saying that you would do. And then finally, I'm sorry that you can't see it, but number 5 is we set the frame visibility to true. So we turn on the visibility of the frame. Frame.setVisible true. Here's how you would create an empty frame window. Your Java virtual machine does all the work of displaying the frame on your GUI, whether it's Windows or whether it's Mac, which makes it quite handy. It's very nice that it's platform independent. So we're going to import, at line 1, we import javax.swing.jframe. We've got some comments. Line 6, public class empty frame viewer. You could call it whatever you want. This is just a sample calling it empty frame viewer. Then we've got our main method. Inside the main method at line 10, JFrame frame equals new JFrame. Then at line 12, line 12 and 13, we're setting up some constants, frame width and frame height. You don't have to set up constants. You could have typed in 300, 400 in your set size method call, but setting a constant equal to frame width and frame height is better documentation. It's better, enhances readability. So then at line 14, frame.setSize. Line 15, we set the title. Line 16, we set the default close operation. And finally, at line 18, we make it visible. We can add components. We can't draw directly on the JFrame object, but we can add them to a component to add to the frame. So a few examples of objects to add are JComponents, JPanel, that should be an uppercase P in panel, JText component, and JLabel. You can extend the JComponent class and override its paint component. Take that on faith right now. We skipped inheritance is not part of our course objective, so we went right over chapter 9. However, this extends is using inheritance. You don't really need to understand it to be able to implement GUIs, but just take it on faith. In fact, there will be several programs that I'll just ask you to type up exactly just to get a feel for how you use them, and then we'll modify them. So to add a panel, if you have more than one component, you can put them onto a panel, which is a container for other user interface components, and then add the panel to the frame. So first we create the buttons, or the components, excuse me. JButton, button equals new JButton, click me. So click me will be the text that's on that button. And then JLabel, label equals new JLabel, hello world. So hello world will be the text that appears on that label. And then we add them to the panel. So we create a JPanel, call it panel equals new JPanel, and then panel.add button, panel.add label, and then frame.add panel. So we're adding the panel that contains the buttons and the labels. We're adding that to the frame. So here's an example of a filled frame viewer. So similar to what we've done last time, we set, first of all, I'm sorry, let me back up and look at the imports. We're importing Java X.Swing JButton, Java X.Swing JFrame, Java X.Swing JLabel, and Java X.Swing JPanel. All of the GUI components are in the, all the ones we're going to be using are in the Java X.Swing library. And they all start with J for whatever reason to indicate that they are a swing component. So JFrame frame equals new JFrame. At line 15, JButton button equals new button. JButton, excuse me, JLabel label equals new JLabel. And then we create a panel at line 18. We add the button to the panel. We add the label to the panel. We add the panel to the frame. Then we set the size of the frame. We set the title of the frame. We set our default close operation. And then we make the frame visible. Again, with inheritance, we kind of breezed right over it, but just to try to make it a little bit clearer at this point, we can create our own class that extends JFrame. So filled frame would be its own class, and it uses all of the things that are in JFrame we now have in filled frame when we say filled frame extends JFrame. So here we can create the button and the label and add them to the new panel in a create components method, and then we can instantiate a customized frame in the main method by saying JFrame frame equals new filled frame. Notice on the right hand side of that new operator, new keyword, we use filled frame rather than JFrame. This is implementing something known as polymorphism, which again, it's part of inheritance that we're not going to cover it, but basically polymorphism means many forms. It can change based on the circumstances. So in this case, our JFrame is actually referencing a filled frame and not a JFrame.